Hyvää päivää. Olen Jonathan Sage Ibiamalta. Kiitos paljon kutsusta tulla tänne. Kuten huomaatte, osaan puhua suomea. Did you understand what I said? But as we have a few English in the audience or Americans, I will speak English instead. Is that okay with you? Right, so what I'm going to talk about is IoT, Internet of Things. And what I hope to do in a very short period is to explain what, and I guess some of you are going to be experts in IoT. For some of you, you might not know what it is. So I'm going to try and cover why IoT is important, what it's good for, and then I'm going to look at all the risks and the security issues around IoT. And I have a few nice films, so if you bear with me and the technology works, I've got a few examples, okay? So to start with, although we're talking about IoT, I really like to begin with the cybersecurity question. So when you have an attack, and Chester talked very nicely about the types of attacks you see, you should be asking yourself, why am I being attacked? What campaigns are targeting organizations like mine? What tools and techniques are they using? How can I better define my defense posture? Who are my adversaries? Is this a nation state? Is it a student hacker? Is it a cyber criminal? So what's behind this attack? And what's the nature of my adversary? And have others been attacked too? Can I protect myself through information sharing? These are top of mind things. Before we look at IoT, these are the types of questions that our customers are asking us. To move on to IoT, it's quite funny because I did this same presentation 6 months ago with Telefonica in Madrid, and we thought, well, people really won't begin to understand what IoT is and where security is important. So we like to start with, what's your IoT story? Now, being in Finland, I'm sure you all have wearable devices. I don't know whether it's your Polar watches or your smart toasters or your toothbrushes connected to the internet. So I guess if I say who has an IoT experience, you're going to put your hands up. Tell me how many of you have an Internet of Thing that you use, that you're wearing or you have in your household, or whether it's connected to your car, or whether you have sensors. So how many people? Okay, nearly all of you. Right, that's great. I mean, everyone has a different story, and a lot of the techies amongst you will have been doing this for a long time. What's interesting is the rate of growth. I mean, if you look at where we are today, the market, according to IDC, is going to expand to $3 trillion in 2020. That's probably a conservative estimate. So there's a huge amount of business here. We're not talking about the consumer devices, but enterprise level. And another interesting fact before I get more deeply into this is, and this will be no surprise for the data scientists, when we look at things out there, 90% of the data is never captured. And you're talking about what type of data from telephones, tablets, sensors. There's a whole tsunami of data that's hitting us, and 90% of the data we've created is over the last couple of years. 60% of the data that comes from these things loses its value after a number of seconds. So if you think that 60% only has a value if you can use it quickly. 80% of the data is unstructured. And the worst statistic is something like 70% of the data from Internet of Things is not secured. So that's the thing that worries us, 70%. Now, traditionally, I think when you talk about Internet of Things, if you weren't aware of what this stuff is, a lot of it is is now wearables. And that, interestingly, it's called well-being stuff. Whether it's Fitbit or the other gadgets, it's all about well-being and health, because once you get into proper health data, a lot of that then is subject to regulation. So you'll find a lot of the gadgetry out there, although it's very, very useful perhaps for serious health applications, is tagged as a well-being device. And there's a lot of it around. And it does a lot of things. I mean, how many of you have a wearable device, a Fitbit or some type of, how many of you are wearing some of that stuff today? Yeah? I mean, it's great when you set it up, and I know most of you will be very technical, but one of the first things it asks you when it goes to the website, when you set up a Fitbit, you can only do it via the web. And when you set up your dashboard, it says, do you want to share this stuff with anybody? And if you're not careful, you click the wrong button, your profiles, your exercise patterns, how long you sleep, what you eat, everything about you is broadcast on Twitter on a daily basis if you're not careful. So the whole sort of, the data that's very, very personal is easily out there and can be tracked. Now, a quick definition of what a thing is, and this I think is quite a nice definition, and it looks at the 3 layers. So you've got, it's a device that has its own IP address and connects over a network. So you've got I don't think I need to dwell on this, but that's how we define a thing. In IBM terms, this is a huge market for our customers. And you see here we have a whole variety of different, we have a platform, it's the IBM Watson IoT platform, and you have different sectors, such as facilities management, transportation, health and safety, work management, all types of connected products. And these actually transform industries. So for us, this is a huge area of importance. Whether you've got sectors that are probably more familiar, you've got to control your home from your phone, you've got asset monitoring, and you've got smart vehicles, and you've got health. Those are 4 examples of sectors that are really important. And customers are coming to us to find out how they can transform their industries. I don't have time to go into many details, but there's some nice case studies coming out recently. One is about a drone that inspects base station masts. Instead of sending someone up there, you have a drone system that flies around your masts and looks at all the state of that, so you only send an inspector up there to replace a piece of kit when something's really broken. An example of that, one of the best examples really is the API economy around cars. So you've got everything from advanced diagnostics, you've got traffic and weather data, GPS, pay-as-you-drive, service and warranty data, fault analytics, news, and then you've got the whole ecosystem, other cars, web, social, mobile apps, other things, and partner centers. And this is one of the most, anyone who's driven a Tesla or been in a Tesla or something similar, you'll realize that this is more of a, it's more IT than car behind there. You're in something which is intricately connected. Whether you like it to drive itself or not is a different matter, but the progress is quite extraordinary. Now, when we go on to the less positive stuff, obviously there's a lot happening out there, and one of that, talking about connected cars.
Charlie Miller and Chris Balasek, a pair of hackers who have spent the last year developing a piece of software that can wirelessly sabotage this 2014 Jeep Cherokee.
Remember, Andy, no matter what happens, don't panic.
Alright, something just turned on, all the fans and AC and stuff. I didn't do that. The trick started small. Oh my god. There's a picture of Charlie and Chris in tracksuits that just appeared on the dashboard. But as I drove down the interstate, things started getting unpleasant and very loud.
I can't turn it down.
This was such a fun video. Steve, I'll kick it over to George.
Do it. Kill the engine.
So we're killing the engine right now.
It says park sense.
The accelerator will work.
It won't work! You're doomed. Seriously, it's dangerous. I need to move.
You gotta turn the car off.
Okay.
Now you should be good to go.
Semi drove by. Alright, I'm gonna pull over because I have PTSD.
Charlie and Chris have only tested the full range of their attacks on a Jeep Cherokee. But they say that hundreds of thousands of late model Chrysler vehicles may be vulnerable to a feature called Uconnect, an internet-connected computer in the dashboard known as its head unit. It's not fun to have your 2-ton SUV's brakes hacked just as you're parking in front of a ditch.
Okay, hold on tight. Hold on.
Oh. He's not getting out of that. We're going to be doing some pushing. Yeah, no, that's saying.
Okay, so what went on there? Your car was taken over, you've got a connected car, which is great. Someone hacks into one of the systems, takes over control of the car, and what happens next? I mean, it's pretty scary, isn't it? How many of you have connected cars? Would you like your car to be connected if you had that facility? Not without the right security in place. Another thing that's very recent and is, of course, talking about IoT and security. Yesterday, in the Times, the UK Times, the UK government announced it's going to double its spending on cybersecurity, up to £3 billion UK pounds, and they talk about Internet of Things, and that was due to the 21st of October attack on DIN, and if I'm lucky, oh no, I haven't got a server connection here, but what happened there, and I don't know to what extent this was prevalent in Finland, but a whole series of very important internet sites went down for a couple of hours, and the attack was on one of the DNS, one of the name resolution providers, DYN, and it took out swathes of sites, including, I think, Spotify, quite a few corporate networks came down, and for a number of hours. It was one of the most severe attacks in recent history. I don't know, Chester, if you agree with that, but it was pretty significant. I mean, when you talk about what the European Commission was looking for when they were implementing the directive, they were saying Europe needs an attack like that to justify more regulation. But this was pretty severe. And it was a DDoS attack. And what happened is that IoT devices were used to mount attacks on the DIN network. So these were video cameras and other fairly low-level devices. But the collection of all those together had a very, very severe impact. So if you look at the prediction in terms of to what extent IoT is secure, over 90% think that security is an issue. And if we're going to get this right, a significant amount of spend needs to go into security. When you look at consumer devices, you can go into an electronics shop and you can buy a drone for about 200 or 300 euros. You can buy a full-scale drone, you can buy a multitude, whether it's your smart toaster, whether it's your fridge, whether it's something else, the Nest system, there are a whole series of devices. And a lot of these devices have a default security setting. The password's never set. It's default at 000. And if you scan the addresses on a network, you can find which devices are open. So there's a real threat of these low-level devices that are hackable. And once people take control over those, it may just be one incident. We saw with the DIN event a couple of weeks ago that together this can have a massive impact. And if you think what would happen if someone took over your control systems for your heating, this stuff then becomes critical because you can take a whole power grid down. So one incident may not matter, but an agglomeration of all these incidents, if you can start meddling with power supplies, with heating systems, is very, very significant. So the big question is, I mean here, this is just an example of the instance. I put the DIN attack, Philips light bulbs, the Wired article I just shown you, the Nest thermostat which has been hacked, refrigerators and home appliances, and also locks. So these are the examples that we have. So the big question is, what do you do about it? And now we go back to some technical stuff. The common IoT vulnerabilities are plain old bugs, no transmission encryption, weak encryption, simple usernames or passwords, backdoor accounts, or no firmware and integrity checks. So clearly, a lot more needs to be done here. I think one of the questions for me is, we do it for enterprise, for all the enterprise applications. How do we resolve this when it comes to consumer devices in the home? They're so cheap, you know, how are you going to resolve this problem? So when you buy a device for your home, you're reasonably confident that you're not going to be manipulated, you're not going to have some type of attack. That may be, and this is just my thinking, so don't quote me, it may be there's a role here for stronger standards, maybe for some type of certification. So you can say this device here is safe to use, whereas this one here that costs next to nothing probably isn't. That might be a way forward. I don't think you can regulate this, but maybe standards and certification could be a way so that you have more confidence. Another thing, of course, is training and education. You know, before people deploy these devices, make sure they're integrated and properly secured. So our view here is you need to build security in, and they're fundamental elements in a product. You need to have proper identity and access management. You need to have encryption and privacy at rest, stored data on a device and on the cloud, and in motion and in action. This all means a sort of level of middleware where you can secure it. You need trusted operating systems and firmware. And when you get onto the interesting bit, you really need, in the ideal world, you need analytics to detect when some of this stuff is happening and what scale it's happening at. One of the ways where, I do have one more thing right at the end. We have a couple of minutes, but let's get the serious stuff done first. One of the things we're looking at to resolve this is, now having all as Chester was talking about, you have your tools, you have your processes, and you have human behavior, but you also need very powerful systems in the background to look at anomalies in the network. And what you need to do is to draw in not only what you see on your network, but what you see from the outside, and a combination of these factors should give you a live sort of immune system that'll show you when you're subject to an attack. What we're doing in IBM is deploying advanced analytics, Watson, big data, so you put all this stuff into a machine learning environment, and then you'll find that, if you like, artificial intelligence, machine learning takes on a role of advising the enterprise as to what's going on, because there's so much data out there that a human can only sit at a certain point in the chain. You can't have human security analysts managing this the whole time. This is our vision for the future. We do a lot of, and this is, and I don't want to do any marketing here, but we believe one of the most important things, of course, is the ability to share information. So we have one area which is enabling, not only through research, but through peer-to-peer sort of information exchange. That's a very powerful mechanism. We have, as I said, cognitive analytics at the center of this. If you look at the statistics, a lot of the threats actually don't come from the external environment, they come from inside. So a lot of this is, how can you be sure, even if a guy has the credentials, how can you be sure that someone within your organization that may have been in there for years is not actually a threat? And now this could be for a variety of reasons. Is this someone who's been planted? Is it someone who has malicious feelings towards the organization? Whatever it is, these are the internal element is just as important as the external. So looking at behaviors, anomalies in the network is probably the key to that. And I probably won't be showing another film unless I do have one more case, so if everyone's very well behaved, but I'll leave that to the audience and open it up for questions. And if there's public demand to see what happens if you have an iPhone and you get your BMW electronic car stolen, I'm happy to do that. What do you think? Right for one more little video? Yeah, okay. It's good fun. This is interesting. This film was actually produced by a Dutch insurance company, and they're trying to sensitize their customers to the risks of cyber. So it's quite interesting, the background to that. I'm going to get it to work.
Curtains, lights, doors. It even unlocks my car. And the only one with access is me.
Yeah, I mean, there's an example of Internet of Things going crazy. What you had there is some traditional kinetic thieves going in and finding they'd have access to everything. And that's probably a very good example of where you have to have security. And going into this other world and neglecting certain aspects can make yourself extremely vulnerable. If you're running another very good example, there are devices now where you can have your heating controlled from your smartphone. What happens? What's the security layer in there? To what degree can someone actually intercept that and start controlling your home for you and all other aspects of what you do? So there's a huge challenge there. I think on the one side, there's a fantastic innovation potential. It's going to transform our lives. There's lots of great stuff happening, particularly for enterprises, for healthcare in particular. And the instance, a really good example that I like is, if you say, you have a Fitbit or whatever, and you say, well, would you ever want to share the data of your heartbeat and your health patterns with someone else? You say, no, never. I want that locked up. And then you say, well, what about if you are out riding one day and you have a cardiac arrest and the paramedics on the way? Would you want to share your data with the team and the paramedic? And you say, yeah, sure. So on one hand, for these health devices, it could be life-saving to share that data with the paramedic that's arriving. On the other hand, if it's a matter of data privacy, of course you want that data to be properly protected. So some of this stuff is in security, others are in data privacy, and it's a big challenge. I think overbearingly we're all probably optimists, but we have to get the security right. And with that I'll stop and be happy to take any questions.